You're watching the New Stack Makers, a podcast for people who develop, deploy, and manage at-scale software. For more information and articles about at-scale technologies, please visit thenewstack.io. Now enjoy the show.
The last few decades delivered great advances in infrastructure. Now it's time to build apps that make the most of those new tools. VMware's Tanzu and Alaria platform help enterprise customers drive software agility by accelerating the ability to develop, operate, and optimize any app on any cloud at scale.
Hey everyone, platform engineering is our topic today. It gains more acceptance all the time. It's a popular subject matter here on the New Stack. But with that acceptance comes questions about how platform engineering drives outcomes. Now, we got the chance a few weeks ago to talk with Senior Vice President of VMware's Purnima Padmanabhan, and she talked a little bit about platform engineering from a perspective that really gave us a good introduction. And so today, we get to talk with VMware's Valentina Alaria, who is a senior director for product with Tanzu next generation portfolio. Valentina, nice to have you here.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
I gotta say this, your parents must have had great taste. I mean, that's an amazing name, I just gotta say.
Thank you. Yeah, I love it too.
I'm sure. Now listen, we're going to discuss how to put platform engineering into practice, focusing on the operate phase of app development. And that's a word I borrowed from your team when we were talking about this discussion here. And it's an interesting term, operate phase of app development. But I want to start about the intersection of developers and operations and platform engineering teams and what it looks like these days. And what does that mean, the operate phase of app development in that context?
Yeah, excellent question. So maybe first, let me start from what we're observing. What I observe on a daily basis when I connect with customers across a variety of verticals and industries. And the only constant is that everyone is at a slightly different point of their journey. And so the exact definition of platform engineering, development, operations is very much, constantly changing and evolving. But I can certainly observe a clear trend of this platform engineering function emerging across the board. And what we see there is very much a centralization of functions that may have existed within, infrastructure operations, cloud operations, but also the individual line of businesses into this multi-skilled team that is becoming platform engineering. And the other constant transformation that I'm observing is that there is very much a focus on creating more of a platform as a product. And that translates into, different mentality, product ownership, platform ownership, thinking about development teams as the end customers and consuming of the offering that this platform engineering team is creating. And so if you think about the intersection of this newly emerging platform engineering team and the application teams or developers and application operators and DevOps persona, they're very much the end users, the consumers of what these platform engineering teams are creating as an internal developer platform. So first and foremost is they're their customers, they're the end users, and so it's a lot about collecting the right set of requirements and creating the right collaboration model between these two functions. But also, as I said, because platform engineering is, it's very much a diverse set of skills, it's also creating the right layering of what I call concerns within that team itself. And what I mean by that is that that team is now responsible for what is the right infrastructure that I need to put in place, what is the right set of cloud resources, what are the policies from a networking and security perspective, and that may come from their team, but may also come from folks that sit and live outside of the platform engineering team per se. And so it's a whole lot about collaboration. It's a whole lot about creating the model through which these teams can together achieve the right set of outcomes, not in a toss over the wall sort of manner, and also not in a let me open a ticket and wait for someone to come back to me in like 2 weeks. but very much a collaboration and a flow that ultimately enables the creation of applications and the creation of value for the organization itself. Now, you did
Hmm.
ask a question about operate, right? What does that mean in
Hmm.
that phase, right? And so the very simple way of that we've been breaking down the phases of application development is three big chunks. The first one is what we call develop, which is very much everything that has to do with a developer being asked, like, hey, this is my new business requirement. I need this new app, or I need you to go and change an existing app. And so everything that goes from that ideation phase through what we call the supply chain, right? So really that path through production that takes that ideation, goes into code. Now code becomes an image. I apply all my security, practices around that, and now I'm ready to actually go and run this thing in production. And so that operate phase, it's everything that both platform engineering and application operations and SRE type of persona need to worry about when they have that app in their hands and they're now ready to go and deploy it in production. And that means, how do I go and deploy it at scale? How do I go and deploy it in a way that meets my customer requirements and all sort of other concerns that go with that? And then we sort of see a third phase, which is more what we define as optimize or optimization, which is once that application is running, I can constantly go and learn about the performance, the cost, the posture of that application, and I can tweak it and tune it. Those are the three phases: develop, operate, and optimize.
That seems very much like a DevOps approach, really. I mean, and when you also talk about collaboration and requirements, and it really defines a lot what you hear about when people are talking about reaching that desired state, for instance, in Kubernetes.
Yeah. There's a whole lot of similarities here, and I think the way we've been describing this to customers, and I've spent a whole lot of time with them just a couple of weeks back in Las Vegas for Explore, was, you want to be able to tell the platform as an application owner, this is my desired end state for this app, right? You use exactly the word that I use all the time, which is, what is my desired state for this application that I'm building? And this desired state is made of a lot of different things, right? It's made of maybe I have customers in North America and Europe. So I need to be able to run my application in a way that it's available to these two geos and, have an optimal latency and performance and all sort of things. Maybe I have requirements from a compliance perspective. So my desired state is that everything, every exchange, among any microservice that makes this application is encrypted. Maybe my desired end state is that I always want to be able to use a database, but I don't care as a developer or as an application owner what that exact incarnation of that database looks like, right? That's for the platform engineering persona to tell me, hey, if you're in a dev environment, go and use this small instance, cheap, spin up, spin down database. But if you're in a staging environment, maybe you do want to go and use an RDS, a native public cloud service, and connect to that. Now you're in production, I'm going to give you a highly available, highly redundant, multiple physical machines type of database. As an application owner, my desired end state is just my app needs a database, right? And I
Yeah.
shouldn't worry about this, implementation details really. And so very much this notion of declare the intent, declare the desired end state, declare the requirements of the business of the application, and then let the platform figure out and treat clusters and namespaces and all these services and resources like cattles, right? And figure out how to best go and deploy and run that application in a way that meets that desired end state.
That helps clarify a lot. And it speaks to the complexity of the infrastructure and how important it is to manage that and keep it operating. And
Yeah.
I'm curious then what you're seeing from customers like at Explore. I was there as well, about what they're building out of their platform teams. What is it that
Yeah.
you're seeing them build, and how?
So this aspect of complexity is extremely critical, right? Now, what I've seen as successful customers are often those that break it down into much smaller chunks. And what I mean by that is, and I'm sort of obsessed about it. A customer drew this picture on a whiteboard for me, and I'm sort of been just embracing it because I think it just really drives the point home. Like, they are able to break down their journey into very measurable steps, right?
So tell me about. So tell me. I mean, sorry to interrupt you,
Oh,
but
please.
tell me about how what are they breaking down, and like
So,
how small is it being broken
yeah.
into, and what are they doing once they break it down?
Yeah, so instead of trying to say like, hey, I'm just going to go and build like this internal developer platform that is going to do anything and everything under the sun, they're taking a very specific business problem, right? So for example, one customer was telling me, my initial step on that journey, my measure of success was, I have a bunch of junior developers that are joining my organization,
Mm.
right? And I want them to be able to contribute their first chunk of code successfully fast, right? Right now, it takes me 6 months for someone junior to join an organization, find their way around, orient, figure out how everything works. And before they can actually commit something that it's meaningful, it's multiple months. So I'm building something. It's just really all about creating that collaboration and discovery hub for my developers, and I'm all about that rapid onboarding and rapid contribution. And I'm actually looking at that first time mean time to commit as my very precise metric. Once I have successfully achieved that, now I'm going to start growing into bringing more shifting left security and achieving other measurable outcomes on that journey. So their first sort of step on that curve was just that rapid onboarding. For another customer, that first step of that internal platform, which again can do anything and everything, was to have a very simple way of establishing a templated shape of what these clusters look like, right? And so what I mean by that is that they wanted to make sure that every time someone stamps out a cluster, there's a set of common packages of common capabilities that are always present on all of those clusters. So, certificate management, Flux, consistent way of doing some of these DevOps and DevSecOps
Right,
practices.
right, right,
And so
right.
they established that, and now they have achieved some level of success on that first journey. And and what was interesting from that conversation that I was referring to is that if you establish successfully that first step and have a clear measure of success for that initial outcome, then your success with that will help you then establish these subsequent steps, and you're not trying to chew everything at once, right? Because to your point, complexity is significant, right? And it's translates into how overwhelming may feel for, especially for an emerging and small platform team, to get started on that journey. Which sorry, which leads me to another interesting sort of conversation that I was having with this customer, which is, should you actually build this platform yourself, right? Or are you in a much better place? Maybe reusing components that already exist.
So tell me about those people who you talked to. Like, what were their backgrounds? Like, what kind of experience do they have? For me, it's like, I've been in editorial world for a long time, so I can tell things pretty quickly what's going on, right? Do you need people like that in platform engineering roles who can tell pretty quickly what's going on? Like, what are some of the things you're seeing that you saw in this person who you were talking to?
I would say it's very much a spectrum. So I've definitely meet with very mature, sophisticated platform teams and platform organizations. I've also I also spend time with really the more traditional infrastructure teams that are now emerging up into that layer of
Right.
platform engineering. And so I think the questions, the concerns, the conversations that happen vary all the way from, hey, I've built a platform and I have very unique needs and challenges around my operations at scales. I want to make sure that I reduce friction for my developers, I reduce friction for my platform engineers, reduce friction for the other functions, and how can I build this much more elegant solution, all the way to, hey, I'm just really at the beginning of my journey. I'm trying to make sense of my counterparts. I do see developers out there. I do see DevSecOps out there. I do see all these different persona. I don't know how my role plays in respect to everyone else. And so it's very much folks that are trying to understand what this transformation translates into, both from a technology and a social dynamics point of view, right? And so they're looking at partnering with VMware, not just from, hey, again, I don't want to build it myself, so I want to use the right building blocks, but also I need your partnership to understand how to transform my processes and my people and my team structure.
So I'll keep going back to the example of from VMware Explore, with the people you talked to there, they all were probably fine, looking for different outcomes, clearly. But what were some of the outcomes that you saw them getting out of building from these platform teams?
I mean, ultimately, I would say everything boils down to achieving a faster rollout of applications, because that translates into business velocity, right?
Right.
But that's a very broad sort of outcome, if you wish. And so depending on what their pain points are, I think in general, you can always say that most folks are looking at reducing complexity and reducing friction and doing more with what they have, right? So that may mean that they want to be able to support larger development teams with a small number of operations folks or platform engineering folks. Also, they may want to be able to do more with, again, the operators that they have as they scale out their application practice and they have more of these applications running in production. And so that's very much, I would say, the sweet spot of what we do from an operate point of view, right? Because we really look at reducing friction between these different persona and creating the right collaboration model for them. So we make it very transparent for the developers. They don't need to understand what it means to run in production, what it means to meet specific business requirements. But at the same time, we enable a small number of platform engineers and operator personas to think about these concerns and then have the platform help them enforce it. So what I mean by that is the example I was giving you earlier of take the requirements of being always encrypted. If you have to do it manually, this means that you need to go and tell the developer, hey, every time you're building this application, make sure that you go and include this component, and this is the type of configuration I need you to use, and blah 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 blah. Versus if you can sort of bring it into the platform as a best practice that it's enforced, then the developer will build their app. From a platform engineering perspective, you're going to say every time you go and deploy in production, I do need that encryption capability to be present. And the system is going to look at this app and look at this requirement and say, hey, I can go and deploy it on these clusters. And I'm going to make sure that these clusters are provisioned with the right capabilities installed there so that I can actually go and always enforce that this is encrypted. And so as you scale the clusters, as you scale the replicas of that application, as developers bring more of that doesn't translate into more work for the platform engineer persona, and also it doesn't translate into more complexity for the developer itself. And this is true for all sort of other properties. Encryption is just a simple one to visualize, if you may. But the importance from a developer point of view is that you want to write code that it's portable. And so you don't want to have to redo it. Like I'm doing something in dev and then I'm going to have to redo it from scratch when I'm ready for production. And from an operations and platform perspective, you want to make sure you can sort of declare the intent for how that application should run in different environments and have the platform help you enforce it.
How does Tanzu play into all this? And I'm curious from the perspective as well as what do teams need, who are doing the, let's say the operation side of it, with Tanzu? What is it? What are the skill sets that, make it right for a team to start working with Tanzu?
Yeah, so Tanzu is very much a portfolio of different offerings, and as such, we play across all these different phases that I was describing. The way to think about what we bring to the table is that we have a solution for each of these three phases. So we have, a solution that addresses develop and operates and optimize. But what we see as a fundamental rule of engagement when we engage with customers is that they want to be able to have the choice of starting with maybe just a portion of the portfolio, right? So the first thing that we do is that we make it very modular, and you don't have to sort of eat it all or eat nothing, right? You can say like, hey, I'm going to just start from a couple of the examples I was giving you earlier, right? Of maybe I just want to start managing clusters at scale. And I want to have a consistent way of enforcing policies. Or maybe I just want to really focus on my developer productivity and collaboration. Or maybe I just really want to start monitoring my cost and optimize around it, right? And you have that modularity of how you start engaging. And the other thing that we do is that we make sure that it can be brought to any environment that makes sense for this customer. So they're all in on an AWS environment. We can bring these capabilities to an AWS environment, to an Azure environment, to a Google environment, of course, on-prem, given that we are VMware and we have clearly that footprint there. But this is very much a choice for the customer that they can make. Now, which skill set is needed and how do we help them? So one big promise of what we're doing here is that we strongly believe that Kubernetes was never meant to be an internal developer platform tool, right? It is missing some critical primitives and some critical abstractions that just fundamentally make it too hard, too complex for these different personas to be successful, to be productive, to achieve their outcomes.
Like those primitives would be?
Even just like making sense of like, how do I go and build the platform solutions when I have deployments and pods and services and all these like low level components, right? It was never meant, it doesn't have a lot of this, collaboration models that I was describing, the right separation clusters, all these things. And so one of the things that we do is we very much think about building higher level abstractions. That's how we help these teams. We build higher level abstractions on top of Kubernetes. Now we do it in a way that achieves a couple of different goals. One is, of course, we want to make it a lot simpler for these different personas to get onboarded and achieve, time to value, right? We really want to make sure that we minimize that. And so we simplify, like we talk a lot about, the industry has been talking a lot about the wall of YAML, right? That Kubernetes puts in front of a developer. So we very much think about developers should be thinking about application, describing the primitives of this application. We should be able to generate the YAML. And this is something that we've been working on for a number of years. Like we literally have you, look at 10, 15 lines of YAML and we generate thousands of lines of YAML for you behind the covers.
It sounds like something out of Monty Python. We now must scale the wall of YAML.
Exactly. But that is the feeling, right? And so we very much think about like reducing friction for developers by bringing it to where they live. So it's bringing the experience to an IDE, bringing the experience to the developer portals, right? And the whole ecosystem run backstage, and really simplifying how much of that, Kubernetes plumbing is exposed versus like, tell me the app that you're building. Let me make sure the services you need are there. And let me do a bit of magic for you. Like just give me the code and I'll spit out the right image and deploy it for you and bring it into your iteration tools. So that's from a developer perspective. And then for platform engineering, we really believe that the whole reason folks look at Kubernetes to begin with is because they're interested in treating resources as cattle and not pets, right? And yet, if you're just using raw Kubernetes resources, you're there managing each cluster individually, right? And so a lot of what we do, it's about that operational efficiency that I was describing earlier, right? Where we help you manage clusters at logical construct level. So we have a notion of a cluster group, right? And you can say all my development clusters, all my production clusters, all my staging clusters, I want to make sure I'm consistently treating them, applying policies, making sure they're updated, packages, and all these sort of things. But also we, again, help bring that operational efficiency in how we run applications, how you operate applications, right? If you go and deploy an app across multiple clusters today, and the app is not working, good luck troubleshooting that, right? And so you want some logical constructs where you can go and say, my app is running inside this logical construct. And this is, what we unveiled at Explore with the application engine and the spaces notion. The app is running in a space. The space is a logical construct. Now I can go and troubleshoot it. Even if this thing runs on a cluster that it's on Azure and a cluster that it's on AWS, and it's distributed across a different number of namespaces and all these sort of things, I have logical way of operationalizing and performing day two operations and doing all sort of things for that app.
So you introduced a lot of new stuff at at VMware Explore, and you went to the keynote and it's like AI is everywhere, right?
Yep.
It's like, and so I wrote a story, actually got published yesterday, about your dev approach to platform engineering and to AI. But I'm really curious about the state where companies are really now with their data platforms and how they're getting that all organized, because that's really what you need to build up a normalized data environment, like Pradima was telling me at the event, to be able to do these things, like have a conversational interface, for instance, using an LLM. So I'm curious, how does platform engineering play a role in the evolution towards using pre-trained models and generative AI? I'm curious on your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So I would say, first of all, at Explore, there was a whole lot of interest and curiosity around this, right? So for a lot of folks, they were very much coming to us and saying like, hey, it was a whole lot about, AI, ML, and, I'm sort of maybe not quite connecting the dots on what does this bring to the table? Like, how do we make use of this? And so I was in quite a few meetings with Purnima as well, and we started showing to customers like, hey, just imagine as you bring this new interface on top of your API, your graphical interfaces, and now you can start interrogating this system in a way that it's much more human readable, right? That behaves and acts a lot more like the way your brain works, right? And so instead of going through all these different views, you're literally saying like, give me information about this application and this environment based on this type of parameters that I have in mind that I'm able to describe. And so I think just we're at the beginning of that journey for that platform engineering team, and making sense and unleashing the possibilities of what they can do with this technology. Now, you do bring an important point, though, that is a predecessor to even being able to interrogate the system, right? Which is, do you have the right data sources, and is everything discoverable and present in that, whether it's a graph or whatever system you're using to store your data in.
I got that from Purnima, by the way. I can't take credit for that, but
no, but you said it really well. But and so we very much see that. And I was talking a little bit about it at the beginning, if you remember, when I was talking about just the developers, for example, like making sense of this new environment they're onboarded into. That discovery phase is still very much one where there's room for growth, and there's much more work to do. And so one of the things that we are observing is, for example, like one of the reasons why this developer portal sort of concept is emerging is because there's a true need and demand for being able to just plug a bunch of sources into this one view, so that now everyone is like, okay, I can see what every project looks like, what everyone in my team is working on, what all the API endpoints look like, what all the documentation, and just like being able to connect the dots and making sure that there is that initial discoverability becomes, I would say, the foundational layer to then start building all these, very, very powerful models on top. And so I think we're on a very exciting journey. Insights and data are truly, gold of the future. And there's a whole lot that organizations can do and would be able to do. In my opinion, like where data really plays a critical role is that what matters ultimately to us as a vendor, to our customers, is that you want to realize value. And so having data, having insights really helps you measure and understand where you're realizing value, how you're delivering value. It's very much, I like to be very metrics centric, and my customers do too. Like, they often ask me, like, help me build a dashboard that helps me understand if I'm trending in the right direction. And so being able to just collect the data, have the insights, have that information becomes the foundational piece to then emerge into this new world of AI, ML, and everything that comes after.
Well, Valentina, thank you so much for taking the time to talk today about platform engineering and Tanzu and what you're seeing from customers. I found it interesting to hear about what customers are saying, especially kind of thinking about those smaller ways to think about tackling problems. And it seems like very much a DevOps kind of an approach, and I expect it'll be something that'll be important for people as they look at platform engineering in the context of generative AI and building, and intelligent services. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, you can always subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're on all the major social media platforms. You can always find us at thenewstack.io. We hope to see you soon.